less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor. Interview.
Are you sad, Martin?
Why would I be sad?
Your best friend's not here today.
Ethan. I know he's in Mexico. I didn't know he got vacations.
We're laughing because he's going to have to edit this later, and so this will be a nice surprise that we started our podcast talking about Ethan.
Well, it was also interesting that it took about 15 minutes to set up, and when Ethan's here, it takes an hour and a half.
Yeah. So something's wrong, Ethan. You got to figure it out. No,
man.
The big difference maker is we didn't set up video. So we really skipped a lot of steps there. We don't need to give him
any reasons.
That's great. Well, hey, I'm going to try to find a segue here. A lot of times businesses will have someone like Ethan who's gone, who really makes the magic happen behind the scenes, and then they're kind of lost. And for a lot of businesses, they are that person that if they step out, the business is basically gone. And that's a business that you can't sell, right?
Well,
for not for much.
Never say can't, but that's not a good sign.
So we have a business broker on today to talk about some of this stuff. Is that decent, Martin?
It's kind of lame. I don't know. I don't know of a better one. So
okay. Well, yeah. Let's welcome Hank Bockus to the podcast. How you doing, man?
Hey guys, thank you. I think it's exciting.
Okay.
So it's good stuff. We'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, that first time for Hank on a podcast. Usually it is for the first most of our guests.
Every time we do it, it's my first time.
That's right.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, what? Sit
new.
Closer to the mic.
Right.
Don't tap the table.
That's funny.
With your pen.
Hank, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about your background.
I born and raised in Oklahoma City. Went to school here. I love Oklahoma City. It's where I call home. When I graduated from high school, I went to SMU. So I was a swimmer. No state schools have swimming on the Division I level. So I left Oklahoma to swim. That was the whole purpose of going to SMU.
Okay.
And when I went to school there, I was in Dallas, and I knew I always wanted to get back home. Oklahoma's home. I love Oklahoma City, and that's why I do what I do. That's why you do what you do, Martin,
right.
Because I love this place, and I want to make it the best place for my kids to grow up.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us want it to be Dallas or Atlanta or Houston, but I just want Oklahoma City to be the best it can be.
Yeah.
And so...
Well, it's grown a lot.
It has grown.
It's changed so much over the years, and I hope it doesn't become... I like Dallas, but it's Dallas.
I was glad to get out of Dallas.
Yeah.
And so I have... My wife is by far the best dentist in the area, so get a plug for her and Reflections Dental. So we've been married 15 years. I've got 4 kids. Wow. So I
4 kids and a dentist.
I do, yeah. So I stay extremely busy with all of them, from swim practice this morning to soccer, basketball,
everything,
family events. Yeah. So
and you just had a baby within the last 6 months. 3 months ago.
Point of clarification. Your wife had a baby.
Correct.
Okay. Your wife had a baby three months ago.
And my wife is a champion. So 3 kids were born no anesthesia. So don't mess around.
That's women's machismo.
That's right. So my kids for Father's Day got me a Father's Day card, and they said to make sure that I mentioned them by name because they're pretty excited
on the podcast.
Yes,
okay. Well, let's get their names. Who are they?
So we have Addie.
Okay. How old is
She's my oldest. She's 11.
11.
She's extremely intelligent. She's the one who I can trust with the keys to the house and know that it'll be fine when we come back. And then we got the 3 boys.
And you just identified the distinguishing character.
That's right.
Yes.
So then we have Hudson, who's 9. Heart of gold, loves people, loves being around people, is funny, has a hard time walking a straight line. He's broken his ankle 3 times. And then I have Tyson.
Okay.
Who, we looked up the root word, the origin of the word Tyson. It means fire breath. And that fits his personality. He is feisty.
Yeah.
He loves to scrap and loves sports where he can get in and push and he's feisty. And then Anderson, so he's my 3-month-old, and he's all about smiles. So my wife, they gave me a Father's Day card, and this is just the way it is at my house. The Father's Day card said, here's a pin. It says, "You're the boss for the day." And it said, "Happy Father's Day. When today's over, please give this pin back to Mom." and so that's the truth. That's the way.
That's how it works.
My house works.
Have you noticed with your kids, mine are 28 to 39, so
Right.
long gone, but that 3-month-old,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it worked this way for you, but they are who they are. At 3 months old, you look, they're smiling, laughs, or growly, or
That's the
whatever.
way they're gonna be.
That's who they're going to be.
That's the way they're gonna be.
40 years later.
That's right.
That's
I mean,
so
I
wild.
think as parents, we can mess it up. Cleo, you got that coming here pretty
I
soon.
know. We got about 9 more weeks.
Yeah.
We have our first one.
Yeah, but I think
there's the
parents can
nature.
mess it up, but who they are is God-given, and it's right there.
And all four
haven't
are
changed it all.
totally different
Yeah.
personalities.
Yeah.
Completely different, but yet come
Yeah.
from the same mom and dad. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a question. What's it like living with a dentist? Like, are you constantly worried about
you
like,
floss?
flossing?
I floss 100%.
Wink, wink. That's a good thing we're not
365
video.
days a year on the recommendation of my dentist.
Yeah.
So Marie, my wife's name is Marie. She says she lives in the finite space of millimeters, right?
Right.
So, when you're working on teeth, you're working in this tiny space in the small area. So, needless to say, she's very detailed.
Oh, I can imagine.
I'm a big picture kind of guy.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's wild. Yeah. I would always, because I don't floss, but maybe 6 times a year. And
Whether you need to or not.
yeah, I would just be like, man, if I lived with a dentist,
She
I'd be
a couple
in
years
trouble.
ago, I went to her and she did the normal procedure and she said, "You have a cavity." And I said, No.
She's
I'm already.
she's just trying to get into your pocket. That's $800.
Yeah. I said, "There's no way. I don't believe this. Let me see the charts."
Yeah. And did you see it?
No, she would not show me.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
On a need-to-know basis.
Need to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Need to
That's
know.
funny. Well, so obviously big family, man.
Yes.
You actually had a family business growing
Yes.
up, right?
Yes.
Tell us about your family business.
Now that was a good segue.
That was a good segue.
I mean, just
Good
for
job, Cole.
comparison purposes. Sorry to interrupt.
Good
Go
segue.
ahead.
Family business. So, my great grandfather was named Gordon White, and he moved to Oklahoma in the early teens.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, Oklahoma was an oil boom, right? It was the Wild West,
Mm-hmm.
and he would move from town to town wherever they hit oil.
Okay.
And he would sell rigging equipment, oak timbers, drilling
I
mud.
was just going to say lumber. That's they were made out of
lumber.
wood
They
back
would,
then.
they would stack them
Yeah.
up, and his store would be open 24/7, 7 days a week. He lived right near the location, and so wells would break and heads would break, and he would have to be there. So he would move from town to town to town. Well, in the 40s and 50s, my grandfather married his daughter, who was Hank Bockus, and came into the family business. And so they wanted to kind of set up a model, a stable model for a business. And so instead of hopping at that point, they established like a typical home center, a small town lumberyard.
Cool.
And they developed those, and they had multiple stores in multiple small towns across Oklahoma. And they got into wholesale, where they had a mill that they would buy from the East Coast. They'd get the logs, they'd come in, they'd mill it down into dimensional lumber, sell it out to other retailers. So they sold that business off in the 80s, and it is still existing and in business today
In Oklahoma City?
in Oklahoma
They
City.
have a lumber mill
Yeah, so it's
making dimensional lumber?
yeah, so they're a wholesaler, so Mid-States Lumber, still in
Okay.
business today.
Wow.
The family that bought the business from my grandfather still owns the business.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool to see that
Yeah.
still going.
Surprised.
Yeah, and then my dad came into the business in the 70s, and then I came into the business in 2004. And so 4th generation of family owner, which, the percentages of businesses that
Had
actually
made
make
it
it
past 2 generations.
to make it to 2. We were 4. And I worked in the business all in high school and in college, and I didn't love it. It was, pretty small town, built on relationships, built on my dad's relationships and the people that he hired.
Yeah.
And so I didn't love that about it, but
Why?
I loved business. So
What didn't you like about it?
I wanted, it was, at the time, it was really hard work. So, I worked out in the yard, pulling orders, driving trucks, driving forklifts,
Right.
physically hard. And it's hot in the summer and it's cold in the winter. So I didn't know if this was what I wanted to do. My dad was a great boss, still is a great boss. Never pressured me to come into the business. So when I was in college, I was going to business school. I first went to do pre-med, and then I got the course load, and I said, oh gosh, I am by no way
Why did I say
a doctor.
pre-med?
Yeah. So went into the next logical thing, business, and loved business concepts. I loved the idea. I loved how to improve upon something. Because I'm not a creator, but I'm just an improver upon systems. I think that's just where my skill set was. So I didn't love the business, but by the time I got to be a junior and senior in college, my dad was saying, what are your plans? And I looked at 3 different careers, and after interviewing and researching them, I said, these are just not for me. I want to be my own boss eventually. I want to own. I want to have equity. I want to build wealth. And it naturally just fit. So I had a conversation with my dad. I said, I'd really like to think about coming back to the business. And he said, that's great, but you have to go work somewhere else for an entire year. And if you do that, then you can come back. The best thing he ever did. Yeah. So I had to go find a job in the industry, interview. I remember I got paid $8 an hour right out of college. I had a college degree from SMU. Man, I thought I was hot stuff.
Yeah.
I got $8 an hour.
Wow. Where'd you work?
I worked in Tulsa.
Okay.
At a great family, M&M Lumber. They are still in business, a great operation.
Okay.
I am dear friends to them to this day. Same thing, multiple generation family owner.
Yeah.
They were great because they allowed me to work through the company. So it was very clear, I'm going to do this for
all different positions.
All different positions, yep. I'm going to work here a year. Could be a little more, a little less, but I'm not going to be a career guy. And I worked my tail off and learned an absolute ton from them. And at a certain point, my dad, at that point, had just bought another company.
Okay.
And he said, hey, we're getting ready to kick off this construction. I need you to come back. So I came back, and then the rest was history. So
in the lumber business,
I came
he
back
bought
into-
he bought another
another
yard, or
location.
if you want to call it.
Yep,
lumber yards.
he bought another location.
So this is kind of off subject, but how do you compete with the Lowe's and the Home Depots and Massort Forest Lumber and all that?
So very easily,
Relationship?
if you're not in Oklahoma City. And so our locations were not in Oklahoma City. So we were not trying to sell dishwashers and appliances. We were selling materials to build a house or commercial construction. And so Lowe's and Home Depot do not win that battle. The independents do, because one, you have to have a ton of volume and you have to buy in such a large quantity. We had a lot more lumber than Lowe's and Depot did on the ground.
Really? And actually, Lowe's and Home Depot are bad. I think Forest Lumber.
Forest, yeah. So
some of
Forest,
those guys are the ones that just
those are
bid the whole house package for you and delivered all it.
Yeah, and they were, what we did was exactly what they do. They just do it in Oklahoma City and Norman. So we didn't deliver into those areas. So we were more on the outlying, the smaller Mustangs, Newcastle, Tuttle, Blanchard,
just small town,
the smaller towns. So, that's where we figured out how we could do it, and we could do it really well.
Yeah. How long were you working with your dad?
So I came back in 2004. I started to buy into the business in 2007. I remember, because that's when we got married. So I first started to buy in, and it's just owner financed from my dad, which we can talk about that. That's kind of an issue.
Definitely.
How did that work? How did you set that up with working inside the business? Was it part of your salary?
Yeah. So we, it's kind of like you just do what was done before you. So my dad bought the business from his dad, owner financed. And that's what we did. So we literally took the same formula. And I remember when it worked out, he said, okay, here's what I'm going to sell you.
So you bought the whole business or just part?
So we bought part
Okay.
in the beginning. And then as we moved on, was buying more. Initially, ended up being about 20% is what that 2007 was. And I remember we went over the terms, and he said, I bought the business from my dad at 18%, and so that seems about
Interest?
fair. Yeah, interest.
Yeah.
And I said,
So he bought it in like
18%?
78.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, he did. I thought, wow, that's kind of high, but that's what we did. That's what we're gonna do.
Oh, is that
And
what he did?
So I
Is
said,
that what you did?
I think we can do a little better. We ended up, I think, settling on 9%. But the reality is, I couldn't go out and borrow the money. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't going to be
Right,
able
he
to.
just changed the price
He just
of the business, basically.
So we agreed to those terms, and and I just wrote him a check every month. And so ideally, what would happen we'd come to our year end, being a privately held business. You manage for the taxes, so we would have a profitable year. We'd pay ourselves a bonus. I would turn around and then just issue him checks for that year.
With the bonus money?
Yep, with the bonus money for the.
And how long did you do that for?
So that first round was 7 years, and then
Wow.
ended
For
up-
20%?
Yep, and then just kept continuing to buy more after that, to where when we sold in 2018, fast forward to that, he was still owner and he had ownership. It was just we had worked down the equity piece. So
Gotcha. How much did you end up owning in 2018?
So it ended up being a 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so you already kind of preluded. You sold in 2008. Why did you sell in 2018?
So very clear, and I usually tell employees this, I do not have a passion for 2x4s and 4x8 plywood.
Yeah.
I do not, and I never did. But I love business, and I love systems and procedures. And so from 2007 to 2018, we ended up doubling our sales. So we
Wow.
were started at about $5 million. We ended up, when we sold, we were doing over $10 million annually in revenue. And man, the capital cost to run that was
Telling that inventory and
and equipment
and receivables.
and receivables. We had $1 million in receivables. I had $2 million in inventory. I had $3 million in equipment. We owned all the real estate. It just got to be where it was like so much
So
And
much
I knew-
risk.
And we had and then in 2014 or 13, we expanded again. We built another location. So at that time, I had borrowed money from a bank, traditional lending, to do that deal. And I was like, I got to make these payments. It was easy for me to get the money. It was really easy because I was good at my presentation, good at my pitch, and we had a long-standing relationship with my bank.
Business.
And then I got, golly, I've got to make these payments. And so once I started making these payments, like, this is hard. This is a lot of cash to make the payments, which,
That's something, I'm writing an article on it, but average business in the United States brings a little less than 7% to the bottom line. Meaning if you $1 million in sales, 70,000 to the bottom line, that's
Correct.
before taxes, so
Correct.
make it 4 or 5%.
Yep.
Well, you're not borrowing sales, so the interest rate is not times sales. But let's say that 2% of your sales winds up being interest. It's half the money you earned.
it's half the money you're.
Now, you're repaying debt, so it's not a loss, but it's half the money you earned. It can just really have to have a good grasp on what leverage can do for you and what it does to you.
And I quickly learned that cash lived in the bank and profit was completely on paper. And we were very profitable.
Have you ever heard of a profit first?
I have. I just ordered it from Amazon.
Oh, really? Yeah, no,
It's
we
a-
had Mike
it's a great-
McCallum on here, but yeah, that's his whole point.
Yes.
Is profit is on paper, and you do have to have profit on
You
paper.
do.
But it's not nearly as meaningful as if at least part of it's in the bank.
It's in the bank.
Yeah, in cash.
So, that was just some of the pressure in 2013, 2014 when we grew. And that store outperformed. It was doing better than I expected. And this is kind of what led to. So I remember 2013 we opened in 2014. We had a grand opening, which blew the socks off of all of our expectations. Sales were tremendous. Transactions were tremendous. I mean, things were going fantastic. And I was just utterly depressed.
Oh, I believe it.
I left that, and I was like, I've been there, I've done that, it worked.
I don't want to do
It's
it
not,
again.
it's not
So it's
fulfilling.
kind of like achieving your.
Yeah.
I've got a book over here from an Israeli guy who's a world handball champion.
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote his book. I think it's called Happiness or something like that. Can't remember. But he worked his whole life to be the world champion, and he accomplished it. He felt good for 3 days, and went into depression for 5 years.
Yes, and it was.
Because
I remember, my kids were at the grand opening. My wife, my family, my in-laws. It was just this huge celebration, and I drove home by myself, going, I've had
What did I
enough.
do?
Yeah. What am I gonna do? And that's what led me to realize, I'd gotten burned out.
Yeah.
So, when people sell their business, majority of the reason why they're selling is they're just burned out. And
Yeah.
I don't even know how old I was, 34 in 2014. So I ended up going 4 more years, owning, operating, running, continuing to
Is it
grow the
appropriate to
business.
ask you how old you are?
I'm 40.
You're 40.
I am.
So we're talking about we've got people listening who are considerably more than that. But it's possible to get burned out by successful accomplishment.
I was completely
It's
burned
just
out.
like, I've already won. I've done it. This
Yep.
is really cool.
Yep.
Now what?
And, I think personality of a business owner tends to be, it's never good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're just constantly wanting to improve and better yourself. Just that insatiable
It's the game.
appetite. Yeah, it's a
It's the
game.
game.
And that's my athletic background. Most people with athletics, that's just kind of how they roll. Well, that was with me. And so what was next?
I had a conversation with a client this week, and he's exceedingly successful.
Mm-hmm.
Just and people are after him, wanting to buy his company and all this. But he looked at me and he said, I'm a romantic. And he said, not that my wife would think I'm a romantic,
Right.
Not flowers and stuff, but I'm a romantic. This is all and I laughed because I used the same word to describe myself. And I think I just kind of heard it from you when you said, I love the business. This is more than just a thing I do or a place I go or even a game. It's just more than that. I'm creating, I'm helping the world, I'm feeding people, I'm accomplishing things.
Yes.
And I love that. And I think some people listening, it really helps if you're a romantic because it's more than just wake up in the morning, another 8 hours
Yes.
in the coal mine or 10 hours
Yes.
and back at it. So anyway, I think I heard that.
And I loved my employees, right? Because obviously we were not successful because of just me. But, we had 47 employees at the time. And, we worked really hard to give them the best life possible. Pay them the most that we possibly could. Benefits, health insurance, 401k, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that has a mission and a purpose, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, a business can be used to do good, but at the same time, I didn't over-identify. And I think that was a hard conversation I think I had with my dad, and my dad even had with his siblings who were not in the business.
You just said over-identify.
Correct.
What did you mean by that? With the business?
With the business. So I didn't over-identify. Because the business wasn't my last name on the building.
Oh, well, I got you.
But yet it was 92 years old when we sold. So my family had owned solely for 92 years.
Yeah.
There's a nostalgia with that.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to go to my kids, their kids, so on and so on and so on. I didn't see it that way. I did not see it that way. I saw it as this is a business that has been wildly successful, blessed beyond our means. I've taken it to as far as I want to go, and I'm not over-identifying with it that my life is this business. I was able to separate and see it at one level as a transaction when we got to that point.
But was your dad able to do that?
I think that was much harder probably for him.
Mm-hmm.
And even, like I said, for his siblings who grew up
Around the business.
and it's kind of like you're selling.
It's like, what?
Why?
Did they work for the business, siblings?
No.
Did they have a benefit from it?
They had, my grandfather had given them some shares.
Okay, so
they
they're
had
a little
very
income, but
little,
mostly it's like, this is who our family is.
And
yeah.
and so
And did you have siblings that worked in the business?
I did not. So
Okay.
I have a sibling, but he did not work in the business.
Okay.
So it was just me and my dad, just the two of us.
Gotcha.
Anybody get mad at you?
No. I'm trying to think if there was anybody that got mad. that's something obviously, we can talk about is like when you tell the employees, right? And you're super nervous about how this is going to go and how this is going to be perceived. And, we can talk about that because that's important. But here's an interesting thing. And this is what I try to do in business brokering. You try to transfer loyalty as quickly as you can to the new buyer, as quickly as you can.
How do you do that?
And, well, you have some low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
That you can allow that new buyer to step in and be the hero. A simple example is this company that I'm working with now. We're selling the business, and the new buyer is, the employees stand on their feet all day, right? So they're on their feet working. Well, this new buyer has brought in these high-tech mats so that they can stand on. It's just like super comfortable. It's like not a huge investment, but these employees,
shows he cares.
Yeah, they're
they
thinking,
care.
wow, this is, oh my gosh, they care. So when we told the employees, there was obviously, their first concern is, am I going to lose my job? Well, first of all, nobody's guaranteed that they stay, but when businesses are acquired, they want the employees. Those employees are one of the biggest assets that they can have.
Absolutely.
So every employee was hired, went through the interview process and was brought on by my acquiring company. And the timing, we can talk about how that works out best, but I remember on the last day, it was a Friday, we were closed on Saturday, we sold Monday morning. I did my last tour, my farewell tour, and the loyalty had shifted away from Hank and onto the new buyer. And
this is when you sold your company.
When I sold my company. And so they would ask like, hey, do you have any of those new company t-shirts? And I'm like, I'm not going to work for them. I don't have those. I don't. They were already had moved on.
Right.
And I thought,
excellent.
It worked.
Yeah.
Was it at the time? Was it kind of hurtful? Like nobody was giving me a hug, crying. Nobody cried that I left because they had been transitioned.
Yeah.
They had been given great opportunities. The health benefits were better at the new company, so it worked out perfect.
Yeah.
So
how long did that transition take?
From when the employees knew to when?
From when they knew to really transfer. Was that a matter of months?
It was months, less than 2 months.
Okay.
Less than 2 months. And, the larger the company, we had a lot of inventory that did require counting and inventory systems. And so we had to let the employees know about 2 months ahead of time. And, brought the leadership team in person. We had a meeting with them, and then we brought the president of the company in on the meeting. So he immediately came in, just did a fantastic job kind of calming their nerves. He brought them to one of their managers' meetings and so on and so on, and then it just went from there.
Wow, that's really interesting. So it's 2018. You just had your last day. What did you take a big break afterwards?
I did. I took a break. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I there was a list of things that I did to position myself in 2012 to get my business to where I could sell it. I had no idea if that was going to be in 2014.
So you knew that you wanted to sell back in 2012.
Very intentional.
What were some of the things you were intentional about?
So one, I made myself well known in the industry. I was in a lot of publications, magazines, print.
Why is that?
So again, it was just a reputation. I wanted to build this reputation of, this guy is cutting edge. He's new. He's lead. So the lumber industry, there's nothing new, exciting about it. It's
a big industry, but
it's your great grandfather. Everything is done the exact same way as it was 100 years ago. So I was trying to bring a new sexiness to a really unsexy industry, and trust me,
world's sexiest lumberyard man.
I was not very sexy in that attempt, but. So I was trying to get my name out. I was serving on national committees and boards and industries. So one, I got to know people. I got to know who the players were, the acquirers. I became friends with them. Two, I worked on eliminating my job.
Really?
So I made sure that, my job was kind of being the rudder of the ship and directing it, as opposed to, I have to physically turn this wrench to make the widget, to make it go down the assembly line. So I worked myself out of a job.
Yeah.
Our system could work without me there. Eventually you have to kind of course correct, but I said, hey guys, stay within these ditches. If you stay within the ditches, everything's going to be fine. I incentivized them to make sure that they worked hard. My margins were 4 points higher than the industry standard. Easily 4 points higher than the industry standard. So boom, I had these higher margins built in, variable costing, all this kind of other stuff. In 2014, I realized we had a high percentage of our business in oil customers. So we sold to oil companies. And the next highest, or the first highest, was residential builders, then oil. Well, we all know what happened in 2008. That market collapsed.
It happens to oil all the time.
It happens to oil all the time.
Now, to some extent.
So I went and I diversified my customer base. I picked up some large commercial accounts. So we hired salesmen whose sole job was to go out and get new business in
commercial
that we didn't have. So we picked up 2 or 3 huge accounts. And what that did was
these commercial builders?
Commercial builders, yeah.
Okay.
So we had residential, we had oil, we had agriculture, and then now we have commercial. And it was just, okay, so now we got that.
Yeah, diversified.
We were very diversified. My industry had a super high barrier to entry. Meaning,
what do you mean?
You
capital.
You had to have a ton of capital. You had to have a ton of land. So, to operate a store, what we had, you needed 5 acres.
Yeah.
Try to go buy 5 acres in Norman.
Yeah, not gonna.
It's not gonna happen. And then get it zoned for doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
So, it's a super high capital. And I think to your guys' audience, an owner has to be paid a fair market wage for what they do.
Yeah.
And too often, I see owners pay themselves too little because they say, "Oh, I want the business to do well," but that hurts them in the
Or
end.
they take it in draws and
Taking it in a draw or
no, that's a big.
taking it in disbursement.
It's a big point. And psychologically, if you pay yourself what it's worth, it becomes part of your monthly nut that you got to get.
That's right.
When it's not there, you don't have to because you're going to take a draw which you don't take. Or no, it's huge.
So
and it's honest valuation too.
yeah, and so I
Gives you an honest
I
valuation.
paid myself a fair wage for a company that was doing the size of revenue that we did. We had multiple vendors. We weren't solely reliant upon one or two. We had a realistic growth strategy to continue to grow. And, my team was motivated and stable.
Was this all due with the intent of ultimately selling?
With the intent. And I some of this stuff was kind of osmosis that you just like, hey, this feels right. Some of it was learning, reading, but it was with the intent of I could not see myself at 65 doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
So yes, I didn't know when that day would come.
How long? 4 years, 3 years to kind of really work yourself out of a job, have the processes in, have things delegated to get the extra different markets, the commercial market, more suppliers.
I mean, we started day one, so 2004.
Okay.
But it was a decade. I mean, it took that long because we had a little uphill. We had good people and good customers, but the rest of that stuff we didn't have. And so I worked on building and growing those things. It took a long time.
Yeah.
My dad was very open to say, he bought this point of sale system, which was AP, AR, it was super expensive at the time in the early 90s. And he said, I use that for an expensive cash register. That's all he used it for,
Right.
just money in, money out, money in, money out. We didn't track inventory. We didn't know what we had.
You didn't?
At the time, no.
Ooh.
So
Yeah.
he bought it and he had it, but it just wasn't a priority to him to figure out how to use it. So, and that was the first thing. I was like, okay, how do we use the system that you own to help give us the numbers that we know how to manage our business? So, that took years to get that up. and
Yeah.
running.
Now, inventory is a large part of your business.
It was a big part.
I mean, that's one of the main purposes of your business.
It was.
Most of our listeners don't think of inventory, contractors or builders even, as what their business exists for, but they have it,
So
and they need to know it.
they do. And so you think about like a contractor or home builder today. So I would sell that builder the materials. We'd deliver it to the job site. Now, for your clients, they need to go and they need to check that in.
Oh,
And so we would, because we didn't want to be, screwed by saying,
Right.
hey, you delivered this bundle of OSB and I can't
Yeah,
find
yeah.
it. So we, again, talk about trying to be industry leader. We took pictures of everything well in advance. We marked a pick ticket that we, like UPS, stuck to the material. So we were ahead of our time back in that day. And so your builders need to, that's
no,
inventory.
I hear that. Well, I'm actually thinking of inventory sitting in shops and on trucks, but and not mentioning any particular company, but I have clients who said, well, we went out there and counted. They buy a whole house, right? The truss and everything gets delivered in a bundle. Nobody counted anything. There could be 42 before it's missing.
It could be.
Which used to be $80, and what is it now?
Thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they don't have any process for that. And if they do go count it, compare it to what? To what the ticket the driver gave them?
Yes.
But then how does it get back to anyway? So
there's inventory. And
yeah.
As a builder, you can't.
everything's sitting out there as
It's sitting
inventory
there.
of the sort.
You've got employees that are they cutting a 2x6 as opposed to just getting the length, 10 boards
Oh, yeah.
down, so they own that inventory. There is inventory control that they can work
I
on.
have to mention this. I have an example in my book of a true story of
There you
a
go,
home
plugging your
builder.
book again.
What's that?
There you go, plugging your book again.
And I'm not finished. I'm not finished. But he built about 60 homes and spec homes, and we managed to get his margins up 3%. And that 3% was the same as building and selling 18 homes under
Wow.
his old margin.
Wow.
So I always tell people, what would you rather do? Build 18 homes and hold them and sell them, hope you sell them, or get your margins up 3%. And the 3% came from this kind of thing. That's why I thought of it.
Shrink loss.
Well, shrink loss. This in a particular design he had, he could add like 800 square feet. No, he could add 50 square feet for $800. Okay, well, 50 square feet times Oklahoma people
Yeah.
will laugh, but $150 a square foot is a lot more than $800.
Right.
Just stuff like that. And it was just little, it was always little things. But
Right.
just like you said, controlling inventory is a
Right.
big part of it.
Talking about inventory and the industry that you used to be in, when you see what the lumber prices are now and what they reached, what was the high?
Your
Do you
2
know?
million would have been 6 million.
So I've heard just kind of from friends that I've kind of tried to keep up with. So that typical house in Oklahoma, 2,000 square feet. We used to sell a full lumber pack. That's going
Yeah.
to get it quote unquote in the dry, $20,000. That's $50,000
Right now?
right now.
Holy
So
cow.
2.5.
And just, it is flattening out
flattening.
right now
It is
and kind of
flattening.
maybe
And-
coming back.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So at the
yeah.
all-time high, we're talking 2.5 times what
Yeah.
it was.
And how would that have made you sweat as an owner operator?
Here's another example. I was talking to a guy. So I'm working on an acquisition right now, and he was just telling me a story. He said, I bought a carload of OSB. So that's comes in on a railroad car. And he said, I saved the invoice and I framed it because I pray I never see it again. It cost him $720,000
to buy a car,
to buy
load of
one
OSB.
car. And you're typically buying one or two a month. $720,000. So talk about capital, talk about the cost of money. My line of credit was $500,000.
Yeah.
I couldn't even have covered one car. So insane of how that price and how that has to then trickle down to your clients. They got to prepare. The worst thing that a builder can do is not know the market and not know that sheet used to cost $30, now it costs $35, now it costs $40, now it costs $45. And it's costing $45 a sheet where I used to sell it $8.
Right.
I mean,
It's not just builders. I have 4 cabinet manufacturers, and they're all
manufacturers.
buying plywood and melamine.
my HVAC guy said, they've occasionally got to buy, a 2x4 sheet of plywood, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, what's happened?"
Yeah.
It's you got to pay attention to those things.
It's so nuts. So I want to talk about your transition from, you took this break after you sold in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
What landed you on becoming a business broker during that time?
Took a break, had no idea what I wanted to do. Knew that I loved being around people and business owners and talking to people.
Yeah.
So I knew that was what it was going to be some way, somehow.
Okay.
And I loved the art of the deal. Okay, so those...
Donald Trump's book?
No.
Yeah. The concept.
I loved the deal. So one, I learned a ton of mistakes that I did through my own transaction. And then I had personal friends who, again, come out of the woodworks who were my age, and they said, hey, can I come to your office? So we kept our office. Our corporate office did not go with the acquisition.
Oh, okay.
So,
You still have it today?
and that's where I still work today.
Okay, cool.
Because they didn't need that, so that was great. So we kept it. So one, that allowed me to go to work every day to kind of prepare for what that future looked like.
Yeah.
So, I was going to my office and I was learning and reading, and, friends would call and they'd say, can I come and sit with you and have a conversation at your office? I'd say, sure. Thought we'd be talking about sports or whatever. And, they'd say, hey, I want to sell my business to you.
Because you had done it, they were like, hey, what was this?
And similar things, burnout, being
Yeah.
young. And so, nobody talks about that. And so I'd say, okay, well, here's what you need to do. Let's do this, do this, do this. And so we'd kind of go through, and I say, here's what I did. I can only tell you what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And, that happened 3 times. And then end up kind of understanding that there is a place that I can make a career to help. And as I said in the beginning, I love Oklahoma City. I want Oklahoma City to be the best it can. And there are 10,000 baby boomers that are turning 65 every day in the U.S. 2/3 of all small businesses are owned by that generation.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen? Are they just going to poof, go away? There are really good businesses that need to stay in business.
Yeah. Communities need them.
Communities
Employees need them.
Employees need them.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to see those go away.
Yeah.
So, that's the purpose behind doing what I'm doing now, is just kind of evolved. It kind of started into like just a consulting, and then it ends up being just really strictly brokering, because I didn't have the patience for consulting, to try to say, okay, here's what you got to do. Let's hold your hand. Let's do it. That's what you do, Martin, to help them get to the point, because there are a lot of people that they just are not ready to sell. They need to do step 1, 2, 3. But there are those people that are say, I'm ready. And my clients are wanting out. They want to sell their business. They're not looking to raise capital. They're not looking to raise debt to expand. Mm-hmm. They're not looking for investors. They are looking to sell those assets to somebody else so that they can do the next thing in their life, whether that's retirement, golf, Florida, pay for their kids' college.
Start another business.
Yeah, start another business.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So there are so many things. I'm sure our listeners are going, get to this. But one really interesting thing people want to know is, what's my business worth? How do you go about giving somebody an idea of what their business is worth?
Sure. So first, we do that all day, every day. So that would be just an evaluation or even an appraisal service. So, my business does those. So if somebody says, I don't even know what my business is worth, Diamond Financial, who is a clearinghouse for SBA loans, they said that around 84% of business owners have no idea what their business is worth. 0. And yet it's their largest asset.
That's 100%.
Okay. So that's the first thing. Most people say, I just don't know what I'm worth. I don't know who'd buy me. So, there's a process that we can go through to really kind of give you that number. Literally give you a number.
Just for listeners, though, can you talk
Sure.
about,
How?
people know about the multiples, or they think
Yeah.
it's worth what my trucks and my cash and what
Yep.
my real estate. Just something that somebody driving around could go, whoa.
Sure. So we do it on three different levels or different qualifiers. Okay. So most people call me and they say, I Googled and it says, 6 times. Oh, I'm like, 6 times what? 6 times revenue, 6 times, they all throw out EBITDA. They don't know what it really means.
Right.
Interest before earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Well, I had one guy who was throwing in his property taxes, his payroll taxes.
Right.
Now, that's
any
not
kind of tax.
Yeah, anything that on his P&L said taxes. I'm like, that's not it. So you got to understand that. And what you read about on the internet is not reality. That's just the high level talk. And so you can't say a lumber company is going to sell for 6 times as well as a restaurant. Yeah, right. They're totally different. So the approaches that we use in doing evaluations, one's going to be the cost approach. So that's strictly, like you were saying, Martin, what are my assets worth? A business is going to be worth, at the very minimal, what the assets are worth. So if you've got trucks, equipment, furniture, fixtures, inventory.
Sellable assets.
Sellable assets. Yeah. So that's the first. The second is the market approach, which we will take comparable transactions in similar sizes, similar industries of privately held businesses and compare those to where you are. So we look across the country. Now that's kind of hard because what's happening in Oklahoma is not happening in California, but we do that. And then the last is the income approach, which is the most important because that deals with cash flow.
And that is where you get into multiples.
That's when you get
earnings,
into multiples.
Which
Yeah.
EBITDA is this kind of restated earnings.
That's right. It is. And in a small business, when a small run business where the owner is heavily involved, we like to use a term called seller discretionary earnings. So that's going to take anything that is associated with the income of that owner. And
the Hawaii board trip that cost $40,000, the Cadillac Escalade, the
kids' cell phones,
the football tickets,
the hunting lease,
right.
so on and so on and so on. And we say, if that owner goes away, what is the new owner truly going to get in a cash flow perspective? Which I think, it's good to talk about. I'm sure you guys talk about, there's a hobby, there's a job, there's a business, and there's an investment. So a hobby costs you money to do.
Right.
And there are people that have, businesses that are hobbies, meaning they're putting money in, nothing's coming out.
Yeah.
A job means you are paid for your time, meaning that you have to come in, you got to clock in, you got to turn the widget to make the profit. Trading time for money. Then there's a business, which you got some systems in place. You can take a couple weeks vacation every year.
It's a high-risk job.
It's a high-risk job.
You're still putting in the time, but you're just not getting paid.
That's right. And then there's the investment. So every buyer wants an investment. They want this, cash cow that's, sitting on this pedestal that they can just come in, swoop in, buy it, and then just get my mailbox money. Okay, again, that's very rare. But those are the different levels. And so it has to go back to the income. That is ultimately what does drive the value.
That's why they're doing it.
Yeah. And so when we do evaluation of a business and then I try to go sell it, the most important piece is you have to determine, is that bankable?
Let me throw one thing out because this will come up all the time. Somebody's thinking it. So it's income, which is simplest statements. It's your profit, right? That's their return on their investment. So the more secure that is, the more likely that is to continue, the more you'll get because that's the return on investment. But I talk to people and they go, well, wait a minute. If I'm going to pull some total random numbers. I made $1 million last year, and you're telling me I might get a 3 multiple. So you're telling me I'll get $3 million. Go, yeah. Well, my building's worth $15 million.
Yeah.
My trucks are worth $800,000. My inventories. So do they get all that for? So how do you address that? I kind of know it's a little complex. But.
So in Oklahoma, we are an asset-rich state. A lot of businesses own their real estate. Okay, you get to the coasts, the real estate is too expensive. Majority of business owners don't own the real estate. But in Oklahoma, compared to, we're cheap. And I know the prices are going up and it's...
we're inexpensive.
Inexpensive.
We're not. Nobody in Oklahoma is cheap.
No, inexpensive. A real estate transaction and a business transaction need to be treated as two separate transactions. Okay, so
they might substitute what would be rent to
Correct.
reduce.
Correct.
So what about other than So that's a
Yeah.
that's a great point.
So we
Generally,
need-
real estate
real
is
estate,
not part of that.
Yeah.
What if I got a bunch of semis,
Yep.
or I got a concrete mixer or some plastering machinery? Now, is that going to roll into the?
Yeah. Okay. So let's use your example. Company makes $1 million net profit, sells for 3 times $3 million. Let's say they've got $2 million in equipment, concrete trucks, equipment. And he spent $2 million. Well, one, accounting wise, there's been some depreciation that's come off. It's not worth what it is. No, there's replacement.
And in fact,
costs.
it's not worth what it was.
Right.
Well, maybe it is, but usually not.
So, make it simple. Martin, would you buy a stock? It's easy to think about. Would you pay $200 for a stock that in 1 year is going to be worth $100 and going to give you no return?
Of course not.
Absolutely not. So think about it in simple terms. I'm just a simple guy of a business. Would you pay $2 million for a business that has all this stuff, it's tangible, that next year is going to be worth $1 million and didn't even pay you a fair wage? Absolutely not. So it's hard to look business owners in the eyes and say everything that produced that $1 million has to go with the business.
That's kind of the way I explain it to guys, is that, hey, they're buying this income, so whatever it takes to produce it is what they're buying. And if it's worth more than a 3 multiple, then go sell it.
That's right.
That's your exit strategy.
Sometimes it is liquidation. Call the auctioneer.
Right.
And sell it.
Now, what about cash, debt, and inventory?
Yeah.
Okay, those 3 things. So I've got $1 million in CDs, man. I'm not selling my company for 3 times and giving that money.
Yes.
So what about those 3? Cash, debt, and inventory.
So the difference would be in the different types of transactions.
Okay.
An asset sale versus stock sale. 99% of the sales are going to be an asset sale,
sales,
even if there's not tangible assets. So a guy has a computer service business, right? That's still going to be an asset sale, even though he doesn't have trucks, equipment, and everything. So just 99% of the deals are going to be asset sales. So when you have an asset sale, the bank, so if you have $1 million in the bank account in cash, that goes with the seller, because it's not, I'm sorry, with the seller.
Yeah, it stays with the seller.
Stays with the current owner.
Right.
Because it's not a stock sale. The debt, that also stays. Yeah. So I get a lot of conversations where they say, we do an evaluation and it says, your company's worth $1 million. Well, they say, I've got 1.2 million in debt.
Well,
hey.
You're upside down.
Yeah. So that is a distressed, a distressed business. So whatever. So the debt goes with it in the stock sale. What was the other? So in an
inventory.
In an inventory,
like if there's a bunch of inventory, is that gonna?
That's gonna go with the business. Now, I've worked on
is that an add-on to the price? I mean,
so 2 scenarios. An example that I worked on is a jewelry store. Okay, so a jewelry store had millions of dollars in inventory, more than they needed. That inventory wasn't all necessary immediately for the business to be open and operating. So they had way too much inventory in dollars based on an ROI, return on that investment. Okay. So we had to get creative. The current owner actually kept 70% of that inventory, personally owned it, and would then sell it to the buyer as a vendor.
But you're saying the buyer in that case got a fundamental working amount of inventory.
Correct.
And that's kind of, we'll call that leave working capital.
They leave that in there. Yep. Okay. So that was an example. Another example was, a guy had used to do a lot of oil service business. Obviously he had tons of trucks, tons of, hauling stuff back and forth. Well, that business dropped significantly. He had about 15 or 20 semis, but he really only needed 5. So when we looked at this and we said, you only need 5 to produce the revenue in the business, go sell 15. So before completing
got rid of them, so it wasn't a negotiated point.
That's right.
They were gone.
So he sold them. He just went out on the open market, sold.
Let me ask you, I don't want to confuse things too much, but I have a follow-up question to this. You talked about an asset sale.
Yes.
and I don't know what you call it, an equity sale, but a
Equity,
stock
stock sale,
sale.
yeah.
Okay. So would you explain the difference, just in general terms?
So a stock sale, you talked about the bank, the debt, the AR.
They're buying
They're
your
buying
balance
that.
sheet.
They're buying the balance sheet, exactly. That's the big difference. They're buying the balance sheet and they're buying the corporation. So the corporation is going to exist and not change.
Just different owners.
It's just a different ownership.
So I got a little LLC. Is that a corporation?
It is.
Oh, okay. So I could sell that little LLC and it would be on.
It would.
Okay.
You
It doesn't
could.
have to be, New York Stock Exchange.
It doesn't have to be.
It
So
says,
most
I'm
are-
selling my company.
Most are LLCs and S corps. C corps. That's what we call
That's not really who you and I talk to.
the double
most.
taxation,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. And I worked with a guy who had a C corp. It was just the way he'd been set up, and come to find out, and this is what you got to do. This is what we help people with. Is like, what are your after-tax proceeds going to be? So we call a C corp a double taxation because it's going to be taxed on the business and taxed on the
Your
personal
tax
side.
distribution.
Yep.
So an asset sale, somebody comes in and buys everything that you are, but not your company. But that includes the name, the phone number, your website,
Correct.
your material. And as far as a disinterested public, nothing happened. But it is in a new company.
That's exactly right.
Okay, the equity sale, the stock sale, they literally buy your company.
They literally buy it.
The liabilities go with it, the unknown lawsuit that's hanging out there that they try to find out about in due
Yep.
diligence, that can happen.
Yep.
But so for our listeners, most of them would be subject, would sell in an asset sale.
Yes.
I mean,
99%.
yeah, I mean, we'll just talk about that. They're going to get some multiple of earnings. Earnings are a little different than the straight up P&L, but anyway, some multiple of earnings. They're generally going to get to keep their cash. They're going to keep their debt, and they're going to sell separately their real estate.
Correct.
Going to leave some inventory, but not excess. So
Yeah.
somebody driving around, if they have good books, which if they've been listening to us, they at least ought to be
Oh my
damn
gosh.
sure working on them.
They should.
It's
Yeah.
the number one thing if you want to sell your business. If you don't have good books, you ain't going to get a price.
Totally.
I mean, somebody might.
That's a good question. How many of the people that come to you looking to sell their business, about what percentage of them have rock solid book?
Oh, no, it's frustrating. Not very many.
Can I ask it in a different way?
Yes.
Have you ever seen a business come to you with rock solid books? That narrows the question.
No, I'm still looking for that perfect business. I haven't found it, but so I will ask. The first thing I have to get from a business owner is, can you give me 3 to 5 years P&Ls and balance sheets and tax returns? And most response is going to be, let me call my CPA. We'll have it in a couple weeks.
Yeah, or I can get you tax returns, but they're all glumped
Yeah, they're
together.
all-
They don't give you.
And so going back to what I did, instantaneously I would be able to run my financials instantly. I didn't have to ask, I pushed the button and boom, there it is. Every moment. So, please work on
That's
those
after
financials.
you got your inventory
After,
system worked out.
absolutely, years it took to get that with a lot of tweaks and this still isn't right. It still isn't right. But no, you have to have that.
Is that one of the biggest delays in a deal for you? Or from the moment someone comes in is like, well, we've got to get the books figured out first?
The delay in doing an evaluation is the books. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Interesting.
There's kind of on the delay of that, one thing I noticed, somebody said, and we referred to it in a previous podcast, that if your books are a mess, so is everything else.
Yes.
And so that's an indication. If you've got really good books, you're probably going to find a lot of other things are looking pretty
Absolutely,
good.
yeah. And it just shows that level of professionalism, right? And you
Very well said.
want to be
Level of professionalism. I'm going to use that.
yeah. When you go to an acquirer, acquirers are always going to be bigger.
Yeah.
So they bring a level of professionalism, a level of sophistication beyond you. You're not going to sell to somebody that's smaller than you. It just isn't going to happen unless they've got some rich uncle that's just looking to invest. You're going to sell to somebody bigger. So you got to play the game. You got to be on their level.
Yeah, it's a good point. You mentioned that you sold because of burnout, and it sounded like some of the people that came to you right afterwards sold because of burnout. What are some of the reasons that people sell their business?
So burnout. People call me because they're just not making enough money. and they just don't know what else to do.
What a payday.
They want a payday. Health issues. I've been unfortunate to help a couple widows who the founder built the company, passed away. So there's death, there's divorce, there's
Partnership disagreements,
disputes. There is, they got to relocate to a new city. They want to invest into a new business. And the last is retire. Of all those, retire is the only one that you as a business owner choose. You make that destiny yourself. When you're sick, you don't choose that. When you have a divorce or a partner dispute, you don't choose that. When you're not making money, you kind of choose that, but it happens to you.
Right.
Retirement is the only thing that you so choose to do. Burnout happens to you. So those are the reasons why they sell. I tell people that as a business owner, the reason why you want to sell is more important than the price and the terms of selling your business.
What do you mean?
So if this business is so good, why in the world do you want to sell it? Martin, why do you want to sell it? Why do you want to sell it? If it's so good and it's making so much money, why do you want to sell it? The reason why you want to sell has to be so clear that it tells the story of why you want to get out. You can't just say...
You're talking about in negotiations with prospective buyers.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Because if an owner does not give me a really clear reason of what they're going to do next, then we need to hit the pause button. So if they think, I love golf, I'm going to play golf every day. Yeah, you will for 2 months, and then you're not. Then what are you going to do? You've worked here 60 hours a week for 40 years, and that's going to stop. What are you going to do next? So you have to have that clear purpose and passion of what's next.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have to be complicated. It can be gardening.
I mean, if you think about it, it's like selling anything. Like if you're going to buy a used car from someone, like, well, why are you selling this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
Like,
the reason?
Is it because it's
and you're going to
down
show
or-
them that, but that's that. I mean, with your financials, but it's the what's the real reason? One other thing, and maybe this is beyond today, but what about selling part of your business to get us? I'm going to use the word strategic alliance. You want some capital, you want access to some markets, you want a skill set.
So there is definitely that space.
Do you see that?
I don't do that.
Okay.
I don't do any of that.
So we're just...
And there's a reason why I don't, and we can talk about that. But there are places to do that. If you want to sell equity or you want to do a debt raise, you're again going to have to be pretty big.
Yeah.
You're going to have to go into the investment banking world. There's a couple startup angel investors things that are coming into Oklahoma, but you gotta have that real clear trajectory to growth because they're taking a risk,
Right.
And what they're doing is they're buying into you, and you're staying.
Yeah, and you're also getting them.
You're getting them,
And that changes your life.
That's the difference between Shark Tank, the TV show. Those guys are investors. They're angel investors. They're debt raising basically, as opposed to an asset sale.
Right.
Yeah.
So forget I said that.
No,
We're talking about
it's
selling.
real, and a lot of people need that, but that's not what I do.
Yeah.
So who are the buyers? The seller. I mean, and why do they want to buy? You're talking about selling because of retirement and
Yeah.
burnout and all the other issues. Who are buyers, and what type of buyers are there out there?
So it's a great time to buy a business because of what the SBA is doing. So the SBA, misnomer, SBA is not the bank. You don't go and borrow
Right.
money from the SBA.
They're a guarantor.
They're a guarantor. They guarantor that note 75% to the local bank or national bank so that their risk
is minimized.
is minimized.
Mm-hmm.
The SBA is easier to work with than it's ever been. So in Oklahoma, we're heavy in the oil and gas. Well, that's suffered over the last couple of years. So I have probably 10 times more buyers that call me on a regular basis as opposed to sellers. So
I'm going to add two to you before you leave today.
Oh, good.
I have two people looking.
Yeah. So they're tired of the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs. And so maybe they had a good W-2 job at a big company, and maybe they've been able to save. Maybe they've got a an aunt or an uncle that's willing to invest in them. So they are ready to go out and, live that kind of American dream.
Yeah.
So that's a great buyer, that they want to be a first-time buyer. I can help them through that process, go through the SBA. So you have to have the business pre-approved. You got to have the buyer pre-approved. You got to know what you're doing to navigate that. So that's the first. There's a lot of people that are looking at. Money is cheap. So think about how many $60,000 cars would be out on the road today if there wasn't available financing.
Not many.
Not many.
Yeah.
Well, you can borrow money so cheap right now that it's allowing
Not
people,
18% anymore?
Not 18%. What a deal.
Your dad's making money on the spread, is what you're telling us.
So that's an opportunity. And then you've got this generation that's getting out. And, everybody wants to be Warren Buffett. Everybody wants to be this guy that's, owns multiple business. And so when I talk to buyers, I'm really hard on buyers because I want them to have a clear expectation of what they're getting into. This has to be win, win, win. This isn't just win for the seller. This is not like any other transaction you will ever do before. So I say you have to get into a business that you understand and you look forward to going to every day. You don't have to know everything about the day in and day out, day one, but you do have to fundamentally understand the business. You have to understand, second, how you are going to grow this business day one. And not just, well, I'm going to work hard. What is your plan?
Yeah, what's the strategy?
To go out and hustle and get and grow and take it from $1 million and do 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 2, 3, 4, 5. What is your strategy? And if you can't come up with that,
don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
Yeah.
And then last is just get a business that has a fundamental product or service that has a value to its customers. And if you do, that's going to stay and that's going to be there for the long term.
Yeah.
We're not into speculation. I don't do speculative business buys that, they've done so much revenue, but we believe they're going to do 2, 3. No, you're buying a business based on the past, based on the history.
But you like to see a reason for growth.
You have to see the reason.
Yeah,
for growth.
yeah.
You have to see the reason for growth.
I mean, and the seller should be able to present some of that too.
And a lot of times when you're talking about the 65 plus older, that reason for growth can be kind of easy because the business owner is just tired. They've coasted. They're in. Usually everything's paid off. There's no debt. So then they don't have to work as hard for that income as they did when they were in their 40s and their 50s. They've made it. So there's a sense of coasting, and so you will tend to see sales decline year over year over year. And that's just, you see that and you just say, okay, this is an unmotivated seller. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that can present a value to a buyer.
Right, to recapture that.
That's right. And as a seller, you just have to realize it is what it is. This is the bed that you've made. You've got to lie.
So, and I think one thing that we haven't really, or maybe I missed it, but if you're also just a business owner right now and you're looking to grow, you can grow through that acquisition as well. Do you work on any deals like that?
Yeah. So one, that was how I grew. That you can grow organically or you can go through acquisition.
Yeah.
Which is another type of buyer, somebody that's adding
right.
you on. And
That's right.
Yeah.
So when we go out and look for buyers, there's what I said of people that are just looking to be that first time buyer, and then there's strategic buyers.
Yeah.
So a strategic buyer is in the industry. They're in that SIC code right now doing this business, and they are either geographically not in your area, maybe you've got some product that they don't currently have, or maybe they've got a patent that they want and they just bolt you on. So that's a strategic buy.
maybe their sales just go up, but their overhead doesn't, so
Exactly.
they're making better net.
They've got the
They
infrastructure.
can already support it
Yeah,
adding a whole bunch.
And typically, a strategic buyer pays a little more than a first-time buyer because they do have fundamental understanding of the business. If you're going to sell a laundromat, you kind of want another laundry guy to come in there and go, okay, here's how much chemicals they use, here's how many hangers, here's how much plastic. I know I can improve this. Boom, we're good. keeps them. It's just
Send them all to my cleaning processing plant, and that's
Keeping
one
them all-
more
yes.
whole store.
right.
Yeah. And then what about private equity? That's something that we haven't really talked about a whole lot, which
Yep.
is really big in the selling and buying of businesses.
Tons of press.
What is private equity?
So private equity is going to be, some of them are regulated by the SEC. So you've got companies that are going out and doing a capital raise, and that's open for a certain period of time. So they say, for 1 year, we are going to raise capital. So investors, people that have money that want to put into the private equity fund, they give $100,000 for that private equity, then to use that money along with all the other pool of investors to go out and buy businesses.
Typically in a named area or industry or something.
Industry, yeah. So, there's a lot of talk about it. A lot of people think they're private equity when they're really not. There's a lot of regulations and rules that go in with private equity. So private equity, they reach out to me all the time. They're only going to buy a business that has a minimum of $1 million bottom line. So that's EBITDA or cash flow or whatever. Up to, this just the number goes up. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million. They're looking for the big fish in the pond.
Right.
So majority of our clients and your clients and your listeners aren't that type. There are a few, but that's not who's going to be the players.
But won't they also, once they do have that big fish in that pond, they may consider buying some of the smaller fish strategically as strategic buyers, right?
So they're
or
just,
not as much.
They're just so I talked to a private equity guy. He had been doing this for 25 years. He said when he first started, he might look at, 9 deals a month.
Wow.
He looks at 10 to 15 deals per day.
Whoa.
That's just how big this has gotten and how many they turn down. And yet he only will, participate in maybe 4 transactions a year.
So he's looking at a lot of deals, but he's not doing a lot of deals.
He's not doing a lot. And so they have just gotten so good at show me the deck, look through it, nope, it's out. Show me the deck, look through it, nope, it's out. So it's just a constant flow of businesses and opportunities. They're
Wow.
very strict on what they do. They're good at what they do. They're not going to take a ton of risk.
Yeah.
It's really and again, we go back to job, hobby, business, investment. They're buying investments.
Yeah.
How long does it take? And we're going to presume that you already got good books, right? So there's 3 years minimum.
Okay, so
You
you've
get
got
caught up. You got
done.
good books.
You've done all that work.
Right.
Everything's ready. You're mentally, as an owner, prepared. So the business is ready, the owner's ready.
Yeah. Which is not what usually happens.
Which doesn't what usually happen. But in this world, it happens. So I tell people I don't know how long it's going to take. And if I did, I'd be lying to you. But what we have found through statistics and through what we've said, if a business sells for $1 million or less, I tell people expect 12 to 16 months. If it sells for $1 million or more, expect 12 and above. If a business doesn't sell within, if it's not under contract within the first year, the likelihood of it selling is not very good.
Wow.
So why try to sell a business for 2 years, 3 years? I have had clients come to me that have, there are companies out there who charge a retainer to sell their business. So what's the motivation to sell? Zero. So this one widow had been paying a retainer for 3 years to a company to sell their business. So every month she's making a payment. And she had not sold the business. Well, fortunately, I cold called her one day. She was like, wow, here's the situation. She got out of her agreement and had them under contract within 8 months of when we got her books in order in the presentation deck pitched.
So you can actually find a broker that will screw you over.
I hate to say that, but there are bad apples.
Yeah.
And there aren't any of those in Oklahoma, but there are companies in the big cities, Dallas,
Yeah,
Houston.
they
send out
flyers. I've had clients call me up. Hey, you got an offer to buy, and I'm thinking, no, you didn't, because I know how much money you made, and it was minus $35,000 last month. And no, they can fit me. I said no.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I think that's a unfortunate stipulation that I have to overcome. You know,
But if you can overcome it, I'm sure that you get that trust pretty quickly.
And that's why I only represent people in Oklahoma, because I want to build trust. I want to build communication. I want to drive by the business. You know, I want to see what's happening. I want to know why you've done something on the outside. You know, I drove by one and I was like, hey, you don't have all your equipment out front. Oh, well, I'm scaling back my inventory. Well, I'm like, okay, you're going to have to get it back up at some point. So, yeah, I want to build that trust. So there are companies that do charge a retainer, and, you know, I just don't feel like that there's motivation to sell it. So how long does it take? There you go.
Well, I mean, if things are going well and teed up, and you've got a real negotiation going on, and I don't know how much time we have, but we can kind of talk about the process too. But I think there are two more fundamental questions before we do that, like how you go out and find buyers and things. But if you really got serious people, maybe 2 or 3 of them looking, and you select, and you get a letter of intent or some other document,
yes,
it's still going to take 6 months to a year to 18 months.
Not in my scenario.
So if you get that far, it's much less.
So what we do is I want to do all of that work ahead of time. So I want to be able to go into the due diligence process day one. So I've already got tax returns, customer records, asset lists.
So the 12 to 18 months is serious, capable, reasonable buyer putting together. It's like a home loan. You got to come up with all those damn documents that you've heard about, but don't know where they are.
And not if so. Time kills all deals. Period. So there is no reason why the due diligence to last more than 2 months. Period. I want them to last 30 days. Because
you're prepped.
We've prepped, and there's no surprises. No surprises.
I was going to ask a question before that, but you've used the term twice now. What is due diligence?
Due diligence. So, due diligence is when you, as the business owner, have to reveal all the scars and the warts. There is no hiding. And some people say, "Well, I'm not showing my bank statements." Well, we have to. We have to show. We are giving them these financials, but who's to say you don't just fabricate them? I mean, I can only verify so much. So we take the bank statements, and we have to verify all of those numbers. You've got to go in and make sure, have you paid all your sales tax? Are you back due on property tax? Are you carrying your insurance? Do you have any UCC filings on all your equipment? Your guys' custom clients and listeners probably have a lot of equipment. So do you have any
liens against that?
Do they have liens against those? And maybe they paid them off, but the bank just hasn't released them. Well, we got to go out and release those,
right?
So that it's when the assets are sold, they're free and clear to the new owner. So to your question, you have to have all of that stuff ahead of time. Now, I don't want due diligence to last more than 2 months, period. And by the time we get to that dance, we're ready to go. I had a guy who came to me and he said, I've had this buyer and I've been working with him for 18 months. He is either robbing you of all of your intellectual property. He's taking all your customers. He's dragging you out. And I unfortunate for you, you have let this go on too long. Not only that, but he is the business owner, has got the eye off the prize. As a business, I tell my clients, look, it's like a car. You got to have your car washed, buffed, waxed, and your foot on the pedal and hands on the wheel at all times. My job is to bring you pre-screened buyers, period. You focus on the business. I focus on bringing those pre-screened buyers based on the price that we're going to sell it for. And we sell our businesses for 95% of the list price because we've got it dialed down to where we're not going to throw out a price high and hope we get a stupid buyer. We set a realistic price based on what is bankable, and that's what we're going to sell for.
So that takes me to the question I had before I was going to ask about due diligence. How do people get paid? In other words, ka-ching, Monday morning, ka-ching. Put this in the bank, I'm out of here. My life is completely satisfied now. I've got this big check.
So
it doesn't always happen that way.
It doesn't always happen that way. So there is a stipulation that needs to be clarified. So the SBA, sometimes you hear people say, well, the SBA requires that business owner that's selling to maintain some owner finance piece, 10, 15, up to 20%. That's a bank by bank qualification. That doesn't have to happen. An SBA will loan 100% of the purchase price to a potential buyer. In that scenario, that's an all cash payout. So one scenario is all cash. We close, whether that be, if you sell the real estate at a title company, or if you're just selling the assets at my office, you get a check. That's all cash. There's earn out, and then there's owner carry, both of which are two very different scenarios. Owner carry is you are the Hank Bockus bank. I'm the bank. So if a business sells for $1 million, I carry 20%. I am theoretically loaning them $200,000 of my own money that I get back over the terms and the percentage of the time of the business. So if I say I'm going to loan you $200,000 at 7% for 5 years, that's a fixed payment that buyer has to pay to me.
And what happens if they go out of business or something terrible happens?
Yeah. So, well, if
After the bank.
if you're second, so if you did get an SBA loan, the bank is going to get paid first, and you're going to get paid second. So the likelihood of you getting anything is minimal. Now, again, we want to make sure we do everything in our power to not do that. The best scenarios are, I talked to a guy that bought a business last year. I said, text him, how's it going? He said, he called me back. He's like, man, things are great. He's like, we've just put these policies in place. Business is growing. He's like, I'm actually looking for a second location. Oh my gosh, that is just fantastic. That is what we want to hear. Doesn't always happen, but we have to. That's why we are so hard on our buyers, to make sure that they know what they're getting, so that they have that plan for growth, so they don't go out of business.
Yeah.
Now, an earn-out is something different. That tends to be something that maybe.
Would you call the first one buyout?
A owner
carry.
Owner carry. Okay. Owner carry.
Owner carry. So you're the bank. You're the bank.
Yeah.
An earn-out would be something, say, for example, maybe some of your listeners have contracts, have agreements with government parties, the Indian tribes, where they've got to deal with them, and over the next 2 years they're going to do so much business, right? And maybe they represent a large percentage of their annual revenue, 25, 30, 40, 50%. That buyer has to make sure that business is going to stay there year 2, year 3, year 4. So you can structure a deal, if there's like that high risk, to say, I want to do an earn-out, meaning if all of these things stay in place, you're going to get X amount of money. But if customer A drops off, quits, then and it goes back by some percentage, your earn-out goes down with it. So you as a business owner have a vested interest to make sure that you hit all those targets.
Right.
Each business is going to be different on how that works, but how are you going to get your money? It's going to be.
What percent do you think is cash sale versus owner carrier earnouts?
It's changed in the last couple years. It's been significantly more all cash. Significantly more, again, because the financing is available. It's readily there. The SBA, I work with those banks who I know, who have relationships with, who when I give them my deck, they trust me and they know that this is good.
Right.
So they know
it goes a little bit faster.
It goes a little faster.
Yeah.
And it depends on the industry. Sometimes the industries are a little more risky. If the risk in the business is higher, then you are going to carry that book, that exit. So risk and cash are inversely relational. Okay, the lower the risk, the more cash you're going to get. The higher the risk, the less cash you're going to get. Let's take a restaurant, for instance. A restaurant with COVID and the shutdown, super high risky. One, restaurants are super risky anyway. You're going to carry, because that buyer is going to want to make sure that you have a vested interest to help me succeed.
Yeah.
So don't just hand me the keys and walk away. Make sure you walk with me through this process so that I can pay you back and succeed and grow the business.
Yeah, I don't know that we've mentioned that, but like essentially when you sell, it's not always just you walk away. You're
Absolutely
often working. I mean, you said that for you it was a couple months.
Yeah, so every one of the businesses, the owner does stay on for some amount of time.
What's the longest you've seen that for?
So I've seen as long as 3 years, because the guy was younger, in his 50s, and he loved what he was doing. He just realized, I'm not a good business owner. He
Gotcha.
loved the business. He loved working. So he sold the business and stayed for 3 years.
Wow. And makes a salary.
Makes a salary. He's
paid. Also paid for the business as well.
He did a little owner carry, so he's paid for the business. And then as short as 2 weeks.
Yeah.
6 months.
Yeah.
It just, so you in the contract, when you sell a business, you enter into a employment agreement. Mm-hmm. And that spells out how much you're going to get paid, how often, how are you going to get paid? Are you a W-2 employee? Are you a 1099 contract? We have to spell all that out, so we cover all that. And it says you're going to work maximum 4 months.
Yeah.
Now, if it needs to go longer, that's great.
But then you also have to do some confidentiality stuff as far as, what's the term?
Non-compete.
Non-competes,
yes.
Right?
Everybody enters into a non-compete.
For how long usually?
And non-disclosure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
and non-solicit.
Non-solicit. You're not going to take their customers. So non-competes, it's pretty clear when you've got a business owner that's say 75. They're not going to go do it. So I say, you want to do 10 years? And they're like, sure, I'll be 85. That sounds great. I'm not going to. Most is 5 years, and then you do kind of a radius of say 200 miles. So you cannot start a business within 5 years of 200 miles of the location.
Gotcha.
That's usually a non-negotiable. If somebody says, let's just make it 12 months.
Yeah. And
okay.
8.5 miles.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And anything on Reno Street.
So dentists are notorious for that, because there's a dentist on every corner, right? Yeah. So it's they're very strict on their non-competes.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, there's so much. I feel like this topic could literally go on for days. What are we missing?
And it's really fascinating. For people driving around, you talked about some people charge retainers. That implies you don't. I don't know that that's true. But how would somebody who, did you say you don't?
I don't charge a retainer.
So you'll work with people to get them all set up, or you get a contract and say, okay, we're going to be working together for a year. You do that for nothing?
That's right. So
wow.
What I've learned through the process is, we're at my firm, we're pretty picky. We're not about quantity, we're about quality, because my job is to help the business owners sell their business, not to list it, not to show it, to sell it. So last year I looked of the evaluations of the meetings that we had, 1 out of every 19 we took on. So 18, I told them no. I pointed them in direction, pointed them to somebody like you that says, you got some work to do. If you're willing to do it, time to step up. Sometimes they need marketing help. Sometimes they just need. So 19, I say no to. So we're very selective of who we work with, because we have to know what it's going to take, because we don't charge any money. So we get paid when you get paid. And the best comment a widow made to me, she said, you didn't cost me any money. You made me money, right?
Yeah.
And
there's
so
no doubt
there's a big difference, because she had this value in the business, that there was worth something out there. But to her at the time, it wasn't worth really anything. I mean, it was worth the salary that she was making or the dividend. But until we sold it, what's it worth? And so she looked at it, and I said, I greatly appreciate you saying that, because it's true. It's like, I didn't cost you any money. You got that when you were able to hit the exit button.
Yeah, and that famous mutual friend of ours, we have a story that a mutual client, this man and I, he said he didn't need no business broker. He had a customer who'd pay him $8 million.
Yeah.
And so they went through the process anyway, and he got 20.
Right.
And not from the guy.
That's
so,
fair. Yeah.
Yeah, good business brokers, professionals, will way more
will pay.
than get back what they cost you.
That's right. And I read that 84% of all SBA loan applications are declined because of poor presentation.
Wow. That's
So,
nuts.
If I know that as a business broker, why am I not? I have a meeting tomorrow with an SBA banker who I've never done business with. So I'm going to meet with him. I'm going to tell him, hey, here's what I do. Here's what it looks like. He might tell me, oh, hey, you need to do this. So I've listened over all these years to what they want and what they need. It's just checking the boxes. I know what they want and what they want to see, so that when I give them my pitch deck, it's going to get approved.
Yeah.
And so that's why, unfortunately, I have to tell 18 clients, no, we can't help them. We were talking before, is Harvard Business did a review that it's hard to track privately held businesses that are actually sold, but they believe somewhere between 7 and at most 30% of privately held businesses are sold out in the open market to non-family members. So the likelihood is not much. Yeah. But there are those things that you can do. Yeah. Every business can be sold.
Well, I always say selling a business begins with the idea that your business has value.
Yes.
If you believe it, then you can begin to do the things. And you get a little of that romance in there.
Yep.
Because you're not just smoothing concrete today and brooming concrete. You're building something.
That's right. And so for me and myself now, my business, even today, what I'm doing, I am building it to sell it again. Now that could be, again, 15 or 20 years, but I will build this current business of a service-based business to sell it. Yeah. And I'm already working on those pieces and to get it in that position.
Yeah.
There's nothing shameful about selling a business.
No, there isn't. And if anything, a lot of times it's the right thing to do than just shut your doors.
Yes.
Because you have employees, you have customers that trust you and love working with the business and community that you serve. And I mean, everyone, I say everyone, maybe I'm biased here, but I think most people want to leave a good legacy behind. Mm-hmm. And you can do that through selling a business. Mm-hmm. Man, it's so interesting. And this is a topic that I think people need to think more about. Everybody does. Just what am I doing today that's going to help me sell this business tomorrow? That's right. So we appreciate you having you on, Hank. And honestly, we'll probably have you back on at some point to talk more specific and details about things.
Really great.
Oh, it's been fun. Thank you. Not a lot of people ask me, to tell me about well, tell me what the day in and day out, because I love, pulling the curtain back and sharing what really happens.
And the more people understand, it's logical.
Yeah. Yes.
Once you understand.
That's right.
What it is.
It doesn't.
If it's just this mystery, and I have people get mad at their bank. Oh, all this stuff. I go, no. I mean, banks are a little bit conservative, but I get it. But once you understand why they need this, what they need it for, hey, and it's not their money that they're giving you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And they want to make sure you pay it back. And oh, by the way, you want to make sure you can pay it back, so you're allied in that. So you start thinking like that, and then the world's not your enemy.
That's right.
Ignorance isn't your enemy. New opportunities open up. Hopefully today, I'm going to say a bunch of someones have thought, maybe I could build this thing to sell. And then all of a sudden, it's less of a job. Anyway.
They absolutely can.
Yeah, really fun stuff.
They can.
It's carrying business to its fruition.
Yes.
It
is.
The cycle isn't 1 year's tax returns. The cycle is a lifetime of that business. And what are you doing? But I say in the book that businesses pay you cash in two ways. And one is your operating profit. Hopefully you can turn that someday into cash. And the other is what you sell it for.
Right.
And that the second one can be many, many, many times more than the first one.
That's right. That's right. It really can. And, you put that blood, sweat, and tears and equity into it, it can come back to you tenfold.
This will be the last thing, because we got to
go on,
but it's a point I like to make to guys. I said, if you have a business that's worth a 1 multiple, in other words, you make $100,000, somebody will buy it for $100,000.
Right.
A lot of businesses get sold at 1 multiple.
Absolutely.
They didn't go through a broker.
Well,
but anyway, that's what happens.
Sometimes they do.
Well, if you can double your profit, you've doubled the value of your business, because 200,000 times 1 is 200,000. If you can double your profit and double your multiple from 1 to 2, it's 400,000. That's exponential gain. You can do that you can do that in a year. Because why is the multiple so low? And you need to understand what they care about.
Risk and
You know,
reward.
is it replicable if a new person buys it? You know, well, once you build that case, well, 1 to 2 is 4 times as much. What about 3 times profitable? And 3 times the multiple? It's 9 times. I'm going, that's why private equity guys do it. They know that.
They know it.
They want to buy you at a 2 and sell you at an 18. Well, at an 8.
Yeah.
And that's what they do. And it's a whole realm of business and making money that a lot of people just are oblivious to.
You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
I just love it as a topic, and I want more people to think about it.
Yes.
Well, how can people connect with you, Hank?
You know, easiest is just go to the website,
Okay.
BockusConsulting.com, and that's BOCKUS.
BOCKUS.
Just like it sounds,
BockusConsulting.com.
Bockus
That
Consulting.
talks about, you know, our services that we provide that are transactional. So we'll do appraisals and we'll do business evaluations that you can just buy.
Yeah.
We do marketing services, and then you can fill out, hey, I want to be a buyer. You know, we've got a form that you can fill out. I want to be a seller. I want to be a form. That's probably the best and easiest way to get in touch with us.
Okay. Awesome.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you so much for being on, and
Loved it. Thank you,
We'll have
guys.
you again sometime.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.